At 29 minutes past midnight on the 31st of July, Russian occupation authorities closed the Kerch Strait Bridge to road traffic. Explosions were reported in Simferopol. At 5 to 2 in the morning, a blast was heard across Sevastopol, and at 53 minutes past 2, the bridge reopened. 2 hours and 24 minutes. That is the whole event. And it is a far better guide to what Ukraine is actually doing to Crimea than the version circulating online, which holds that the bridge has been structurally destroyed and closed for months. It has not been. This is what the record actually shows. Start with what can be established, because a great deal of what is circulating about this bridge cannot be. The Kerch Bridge was closed to road traffic at 12:29 in the morning, Kyiv time, on Friday the 31st of July. Russia's information center for the crossing announced simply that vehicle traffic had been temporarily suspended. Residents of Simferopol reported 2 loud explosions. At 1:55, a blast was heard across Sevastopol, setting off car alarms. Mikhail Razvoshev, the Kremlin-installed head of Sevastopol, said his forces were, quote, repelling an attack by the armed forces of Ukraine, and claimed 5 drones downed over the Balaklava district. Road traffic resumed at 2:53. The bridge was closed twice that night, and closed again on the 3rd of August. This is a routine. It is not a demolition. There is a detailed account circulating that on the night of the 25th of July, Ukrainian forces struck the bridge's structural support columns with modified Neptune anti-ship missiles, compromising its foundations and forcing a 4 to 6 month closure for repair. We went looking for that story. We could not find it in the Associated Press, Reuters, the BBC, the New York Times, the Guardian, Le Monde, the Moscow Times, the Kyiv Independent, the Kyiv Post, France 24, or Medusa. The trail leads back to a video on YouTube, and the simplest disproof is the traffic log. A bridge shut for 4 to 6 months of structural repair does not reopen at 2:53 in the morning, and does not close and reopen again 3 days later. We are reporting this because the absence is itself the story. More than that, Ukraine says it is leaving the bridge alone on purpose. Robert Brovdy, call sign Magyar, who commands Ukraine's Unmanned Systems Forces, told Deutsche Welle this week that Ukrainian forces are deliberately sparing the Kerch Bridge. Writing in Forbes, defense analyst Vikram Mittal puts the same point from the other side. While the Kerch Strait Bridge remains the highest profile target, Ukraine has recently focused on the transportation network that distributes supplies after they enter the peninsula, not the front door, everything behind it. The Institute for the Study of War recorded Ukrainian strikes on the Chonhar Road Bridge, the Henichesk Road Bridge, the Stilview Road Bridge, the Armiansk Road Bridge, and a road bridge east of Verona, the crossings that connect Crimea to occupied Kherson and Zaporizhia. Through June and July, Ukrainian forces hit bridges along the M17 and M18 highways inside Crimea, rail bridges near Rozdolna and Ichki, and bridges on the A291 Tavrida Highway, one of the peninsula's principal logistics corridors. In early July, they destroyed road bridges near Shelyevo and Urazovo inside Russia's Belgorod region, 20 to 25 kilometers from the border. Much of this was done with long-range domestic strike drones, the Firepoint and Behemoth systems. And here's a qualifier that most coverage drops. In Mittal's assessment, many of these bridges were damaged rather than completely destroyed. That still matters, but it matters differently. A damaged bridge reduces traffic capacity and forces convoys onto alternate routes, which adds distance, time, and fuel to every resupply run. It also does something less obvious. It makes the surviving routes fewer and more predictable. And a predictable route is a route that drones and long-range fires can concentrate on. The attrition compounds without any single crossing being erased. If you want to know what was actually being struck in late July, the number is on the record. Ukraine's Unmanned Systems Forces reported hitting 154 energy targets across Crimea and other occupied territory between the 1st and the 27th of July. 18 energy hubs were hit in the 3 days, from the 25th to the 27th, 14 of them inside Crimea, so the last week of July was intensely active. It was aimed at the power grid, not at the bridge deck. The consequences show up in the civil economy: power and water outages across the peninsula, restrictions on fuel sales, and occupation authorities announcing utility rate rises from October. The campaign has a human cost, and it should not be abstracted away. On the 3rd of August, Sergei Aksionov, the Kremlin-appointed head of Crimea, said a Ukrainian drone attack killed 3 people and injured 2 others. Those figures come from occupation authorities and cannot be independently verified. We report them as attributed claims. The earlier attacks on the bridge itself killed 5 people in the truck bombing of October 2022 and 2 in the naval drone strike of July 2023. Those figures are long established. Which brings us to the part of this that reaches well beyond Crimea. This is not a one-sided campaign. Russia has been hitting bridges too. The Russian Defense Ministry has published footage of a glide bomb destroying a road bridge in Sumy region and an earlier strike on a crossing in Kherson region. The analytical point Middle draws is the one worth carrying away. Earlier in this war, both armies generally preserved the bridges they expected to need as they advanced. That has changed. Both are now destroying crossings deep in the other's rear, and you do not destroy a bridge you are planning to drive across. On this reading, the bridge campaign is the clearest available signal that neither side expects a major breakthrough in the near term, that both are settling in to hold ground, make incremental gains, and impose costs through attrition. But the tactic is not symmetric in its effects. Ukraine has shorter supply lines and a denser road and rail network, so it can reroute more easily. Russia's lines are longer and more constrained, which makes each lost crossing more disruptive. And Ukraine's operations depend increasingly on drones, which are largely indifferent to whether a bridge is standing. Layer that onto geography. Crimea is the rear area hub supplying Russian forces across the southern front. Degrade the distribution network inside the peninsula, and you degrade sustainment for everything north of it. So what would tell us the situation had genuinely changed? 3 things. First, a closure measured in weeks rather than hours. The traffic log is the most reliable public indicator we have of the bridge's real condition, and right now it says the bridge works. Second, independent commercial satellite imagery of structural damage, assessed by named engineers rather than described in a voiceover. And third, confirmation from a wire service or paper of record. Until at least 2 of those appear, the responsible reading is the one the evidence supports. The bridge is standing, it is being closed as a precaution, and the damage is being done everywhere else. So that is the state of it. A bridge that closes on schedule and reopens before dawn. A peninsula being strangled everywhere except its most famous crossing. And a pattern of destruction that, on the most careful reading available, says neither army expects to be advancing across these rivers anytime soon. We will keep following the sourcing rather than the footage. Broadside News Group.